All right, we've got some volatility in the markets, but I think the topic that's on almost everyone's mind who's a Tesla owner right now is what's going on with version 14.2. That's a huge milestone. We'll talk through our reactions. I think Bradford, you're like, it's like the second coming of Jesus to hear you and some other people talk about it. I'm very positive on it, but I've encountered my fair share of issues. So we'll talk through that and a few other things going on. But how are you doing overall, Bradford? What's going on with the markets right now? Down deep on Friday, bit of recovery yesterday, skittishness today. What any idea on what's going on with markets right now?
Trying to find some footing. I think part of this is around the Fed. People wondering if the Fed is going to be cutting rates. The percentage of rate cut is getting up there now, so the market's feeling a little better. So found some stability, but many names are very volatile, especially names that are people have been using more margin or options, or maybe they're not as stable as far as earnings. So things are a little shaky. We've had some geopolitical news as well.
And a lot of that crosses over too. Like, Nvidia had a super solid earnings report. Was it last Wednesday? I think it was. Stock was up pretty big after hours, and then it just, tanked on Friday. Then there's more geopolitical kind of crossover concerns about, the chips maybe not being able to be sold in China. And then Trump says, oh, maybe they can. And so, these big blue chip players that are lifting up a big part of the overall market, are kind of being bounced around with a lot of this kind of political, either concern or, maneuvering that Trump is doing. So yeah, it's an interesting moment right now for sure. But I'm sorry, you were going to say something else before I cut you off.
Well, I'm just feeling like the nerd at the party that says like they don't know, they have no idea what's going on. That meme.
Yeah.
And where he's sitting in the corner, everyone's dancing, having fun, and he's like, they don't know. And what's triggering that for me is Tesla's version 14.2, which I got yesterday morning. A lot of people got either the prior night or yesterday morning, still flooding in waves. It's been really good for me. But I want to hear about your experience. What's better about 14.2 for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just immediately apparent. So I was in my garage. We've got a massive family, 7 kids. So we need a 9-seat car. So we've got this Ford Transit that's in the driveway. And so kind of backing up out of our driveway, we've got to avoid the transit, but also kind of get out of the garage. So like, it's a fairly tight thing to do. Not too complicated for a human, but, still takes a little bit of finesse with the angles that you're taking and everything like that. And so previous versions, like every previous version was just awful at this. It would stab the brakes. It would take terrible angles. It would be just like egregiously slow. And this time it was just like, I pushed the button and it was immediately reversing like the right amount of weight on the accelerator, kind of backed out smoothly. And I was just like, wow, what is this? So like off the bat, it was just like immediately apparent that this is a new level of confidence. But I did run into my fair share of issues, which maybe we can get into in a minute. But, I think sticking with the good overall, I mean, it just seems like a lot of the constant, brake stabbing issues that we were having before, a lot of indecisiveness, that seems to be mostly gone. Now, we did have a few issues, so I don't want to say it's like completely eliminated, but from hearing a lot of people reading their reviews and everything, I think most people aren't having those types of issues. And I am confident that overall Tesla is going to address those in the not too distant future. So the update was huge for me in terms of a kind of checkpoint in how quickly are the improvements going to be rolling out after this huge new version 14 framework got released. And this early results from 14.2 were extremely impressive.
For me, I haven't had the chance to see it around leaves, see if it gets faked out by leaves, but it's very good. It reduced a lot of hesitation around crosswalks. I haven't seen it around pedestrians a whole lot, but I've had a lot of perfect drives with it.
Hmm.
Uh, there's been some drives where it's been a little janky, but it's extremely safe, and I'll say like 99% of the time, it drives much better than I do. And I know you think you're a good driver, but I'm guessing it drives better than you too, Matt, for
Well,
most of the time.
there's that, well-known stat that what is it, like 80% of people think they're an above average driver or something like that. It's like that's a hilarious example, but I always think people are actually prioritizing different things. So like
Mhm.
for somebody, they might be saying, well, I'm a better driver because I'm safer, but somebody else might be saying I'm a better driver than average because I get there faster, or
Mhm.
I'm like aggressive. So a lot of that I think is preference that gets kind of masquerading as being a better driver in people's minds. And so I think when we're talking about being a better driver, like first of all, it has to be safer. Like that's the number
Yeah.
one priority. But then after that, it's levels of comfort. So what I would say right now, based on my initial experience, is it's probably a safer driver than I am. Sample size is very small to make that type of statement, but overall, like I think it's extremely safe, and I haven't seen it get close to doing anything that's even remotely dangerous. If anything, it's maybe dialed up a little bit too much on the caution side.
Mhm.
But where it has some issues is on comfort and like route optimization. And so like there are things that it does that are just like, oh my gosh, like if I wasn't like beta testing this and looking at it as a quote unquote vehicle, sorry for the bad pun, for my Tesla investment, and like better understanding like how close Tesla is to actually ramping this real world AI that they're building, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have the patience for it. But because I care so much about that, and I want to see the progress in real time, then I'm willing to sit there, like kind of blocking traffic in an annoying way, waiting to see how it handles this turn where, it's choosing the wrong way to turn out of a parking lot when it could have rerouted and gone out a different way the way a human would.
Yeah.
So, is it a better driver than I am in terms of like smoothness and that's actually, I would say probably not right now because of all the brake stabbing and that sort of thing. Is it safer than me? It might be, but sample size is too small. And is it a better route chooser? Absolutely not right now.
Can we call it brake stuttering? Because I feel unsafe with you saying the stabbing word around me.
Well, did I trigger you, or is using the word trigger also too inappropriate because that's related to a weapon also? I didn't realize we went back to like 2019 and we had to
Um,
uh, self
yeah.
censor.
So it's really good for me. I'm super excited. It drove me and my daughter from our driveway to Hobby Lobby. She spent a little money on some crafts, and I was just thinking as I was walking through the store that no one knows how good it is already.
Going
Um,
back to that meme,
and
that
I'm
party.
I'm thinking like Tesla needs to start advertising for this. And but hearing a little bit about your experience, I think maybe they're a version of way, but it's very close.
Hmm.
I'm optimistic in that these things are likely getting captured by Tesla, so they have a way to flag different videos or things going on in the car. So if the steering wheel is going like this, like right as it's turning into a parking spot, or
Hmm.
in the middle of a 1 out of 25 turns or whatever, um, Tesla's capturing that. They're going to fix it. If the brakes are stuttering a bit, they're going to get that. So I think they're going to clean that up. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, I think we're actually extremely close. So a lot of this stuff, honestly, to have a very non-technical take on it, it seems like they've got the safety like dialed up to like like a super nervous mom, like watching their 15-year-old learn to drive, and it's like, oh my gosh, don't go, like you got to stop, Betsy, like don't drive. It just seems like it kind of like has this freak out of like, oh, is it safe? And I think if they actually relax that a little bit, and this is something that I certainly remember from the first time V13 rolled out, where like it just felt like the safety, the caution level was dialed up to like 10 when,
Mhm.
maybe a 7 is okay because it does have the superhuman ability to see, when there is an issue. So I think honestly, probably just dialing back the caution level a little bit, as long as they've got the stats to prove that you can do so without adversely impacting the safety statistics.
Mhm.
I think that's going to solve a lot of the smoothness and overall issues as well. And then you're probably just left with like routing issues and some other, kind of smaller, less significant issues.
I just don't know if they have an actual slider.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, James Dalma is like shaking his head somewhere, just like, no, that's not how it works. That's how
so
it feels.
so let me see if I can pin you down. So if you had to explain 14.2 to a regulator, would you call it driver assist, near autonomy, or not ready for prime time?
I would call it near autonomy.
I would too.
Is
I
that
agree with
pinning?
you.
Yeah.
Would you let your kids ride alone with 14.2 on the way to music practice?
So I think the logical part of my brain would say, yeah, it's probably safe enough to do that right now. The overprotective like dad who has never thought about firearms in his life until he had a little girl and is like, yeah, I could see myself buying a gun one day. It's like, no, not yet. Like I need to be like extremely confident in how it's going to handle. I'd want to have done like 50 rides, understand how it works. Myself being in the passenger seat before I'm gonna let my kids go. So that's the overprotective dad answer to that question. But how about you? I mean, yeah, I think you've had a slightly better impression of it overall. And so where do you fall on do you think it's very close? I mean, I think we both agree that if we were to put our kids in there, there's like a 99.99 whatever percent chance
Mhm.
that everything's fine. Maybe, but like maybe it's slightly uncomfortable or whatever. But where do you like? Would you actually feel comfortable enough to let one of your girls do that?
Not quite yet, and part of that's I want to stay married. I don't think my wife's quite ready for that yet. But my feeling of it is that like I cannot. So I live around all these roundabouts. For me to go home, I got to go through six, seven roundabouts just to get home over the course of 6 miles. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of roundabouts. It drives the roundabouts better than I do. It's very smooth, like feathering the braking going into the roundabout, choosing the perfect angle on the turn, um, and then feathering the accelerator coming out of the roundabout. One thing I notice on U-turns is it'll swing out before it'll do the U-turn now. Didn't used
Hmm.
to do that.
Yeah.
But it'll only do that if it has room to do it. So if this was my car, I had a car behind me and it needed to swing out to go this way. I'm probably doing the wrong hand, but um, it didn't do it because it had a car behind it, so it didn't swing out on the
Hmm.
U-turn. So like it's thinking of all these little factors.
Yeah.
So it feels to me like I'm not a poet, but it feels like I'm biting into a steak and it's got like just the right amount of butter and salt added to it, maybe a tiny bit of pepper. It seems like this super premium experience to me in general. I
Hmm.
know there's a few rough edges, but maybe the waiter stumbled a little on the way to the table. Um, but it just seems like this almost like this white glove type of service, and it's just it puts a smile on my face.
I know what you mean, and I think Elon has said it's like starting to feel sentient, and I
Mhm.
definitely just feel that viscerally, as a kind of supervisor in it. Which, like, it used to be that you really had to supervise FSD because it would try to kill you every once in a while. But we're just so far beyond that point right now where it actually is serving you. It feels in terms of actually providing like a tangible benefit to like your day. Um, but even going from 14.1.7, I had this issue on that iteration where it was turning left into like some busy rush hour traffic, and it just didn't get over far enough to the left so that the person behind me could turn right. And so I was like blocking this person for a very long period of time, and it's just like, that's a very uncomfortable thing. And but it pulled out so like to such an extent that I couldn't pull out any further to make any room for the person behind me. And I noticed on 14.2, like that issue is like gone. And it just seems like it's like completely it just feels way more refined, aware of its surroundings, and is able to navigate these complex scenarios just extremely adeptly. I don't feel like I'm kind of holding on to my chair to be like, oh, is it going to go? Is it not going to go? It just feels like confident and assertive in a way that's hard to describe.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Arizona permit. I think that broke when we have our last live stream. Now that we've had a week to think about it, what are your thoughts on the permit? Do you feel like this is a real step? Elon talked about 15 cities before you're in, 1,500 cars on the road. Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, like we're seeing a lot of paperwork being filed and a lot of steps in the right direction. What we're not seeing is a lot of new cities actually being launched. So like it seems like a step in the right direction, but it also seems like we're getting to the point where like what we need like 3 cities a week or something like that in order to hit Elon's level here before too long. So yeah, I think Elon is going to meet his target? Absolutely not. But are we still moving in the right direction regardless? Yeah, we are. So yeah, I think this is big. There's kind of this geofence map battle going on right now between Waymo and Tesla, where like they keep expanding their geofence and their map, and it's like, oh, we're now serving more of Austin, Waymo's serving more of Atlanta. And what Elon responded somewhat recently, like game on or something like that. And like the map is cool and everything, but ultimately it's the wrong metric. Like what geographic area are you serving? It's an important metric, but it's not like the important metric. I think the important metric is how many miles are you doing? How many paid miles are you doing? And you need to be in a lot more cities to increase that. So for that reason, it's an important metric. But you need more cars, most importantly, and then you need those. Those cars to be in a lot of cities, and you need the safety monitors out. So I think we're progressing along the way, and what I think is maybe more signal than, okay, the Arizona permit was filed, is just, hey, we got 14.2, and it's a very meaningful step forward. It makes the path a little bit more credible, I think, to take the safety monitors out. And so I think we're probably a month or so away, I would think, from being able to actually remove the safety monitors, which would actually be right on Elon's time frame of by the end of the year. To me, that seems credible now in a way that it maybe didn't a couple of weeks ago. But what's your thinking?
For me, I think they could remove the safety monitors without version 14.3. I don't know how far along they are as far as whatever software rewrite that's going to require. Essentially, they're going to keep a log of what the car is thinking in words. Like they're going to make it come up with words and tell it what its thought process is as it's going through, and then they'll use that for further development. I think right now they just need to smooth out the wrinkles with 14.2, and for me, the biggest one is school zones, and I think that's pretty minor. Like we're speeding around school zones. A lot of the school zones, like there's no kids around, like remotely near the cars and the road, but still there's a speed limit thing. Like
Yeah.
it's not a safety issue. Uh, yeah, we want to limit the speed, like for cars pulling out of the school area, but like no kids are at risk in these school zones, but they do need to get that fixed.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty hilarious example of that on my drive a couple days ago. It had this electronic sign that changed the speed limit to 25 miles per hour, which it didn't recognize, which I was kind of surprised by because previous versions of this, I think even going back to V12, had recognized the electronic speed limit sign and adjusted it accordingly. But so there's this, like, it's a speed trap. Like the cops stay there pretty much every day, I think. And so I see this cop, like, pulling around. I see that my car did not actually drop the speed limit from 40 miles to 25. And then it's trying to pass this car going, 28 miles an hour on the right. I was like, no, like, please do not give me
Was
a
this
ticket
Mad
right now.
Max mode or what was
No,
this?
I hit it on hurry.
Okay.
So like, that was just I'm sure if it was in slow it would have been fine, and normal I probably wouldn't have passed on the right, but it was just, that I agree with you, it's a small issue, but it's an important one. And then the navigation issue, and kind of like choosing how to exit out of parking lots and like route around particular areas, like that seems like an important one. I mean, just another example of that, I was going to pick up a pizza the other day, and you can literally just go down the road and then turn right into the parking lot, but it wanted to turn right onto this other road and then turn left into the other side of the parking lot across all this traffic. And I was just like, well, that's a really dumb way to do that. Like, why wouldn't you just route to minimize the number of left turns or something like that as you're going into or out of a parking lot? That seems like a rational thing to do that it's just not doing yet. So, but that seems like a very simple fix. I agree. And I think we're getting close to the area where we're nitpicking. Like, you shouldn't speed in school zones. I agree. But I can guarantee you, if there was like a child crossing the street, it would have behaved very differently than, it did, just with the situation I'm on, or the situation I experienced. So I do think there's this difference between, what it should ideally do because of, customs and laws and everything like that, in these types of areas, and they need to fix that. But I think the most important thing is that it should be safe around unprotected pedestrians. And I think it passes that test like extremely well.
I got a spicy question for you.
Answer C. Okay. That was always what I guessed in high school, and I didn't know the answer.
What comes first, Tesla in 15 cities with 2,500 cars in total, or a new federal law that's much more permissive around autonomy in the United States?
I think 15 cities. I'm not going to bank on the speed of the federal government for anything. Would you agree, or do you have a different take?
I'd agree with that.
So, then I think that the question in my mind is like, what is the limiting factor here? Is it like the permitting of states like Arizona and other jurisdictions where they're trying to expand and go through that whole process? Is that really the limiting factor, or are we still kind of constrained by, the technology and FSD, as good as it is probably not ready for unsupervised yet. At least nationwide. Within Austin, sure, you could kind of make that case, but is the limiting factor actually just the technology at this point?
Right now, yes. I'd say you don't want to go super wide with robo taxis when it's a bit jittery or stuttery. Even though it's super cool and nerds like us don't mind it a whole lot, your average person can get fussy or feel like a bit snake bitten if it's acting weird in different situations. So the Waymos for a very long time have been very smooth as far as I know. So I know occasionally they make some mistakes, but the overall experience for ride after ride is that they're smooth. I didn't feel like they were as smooth as the Tesla when the Tesla is behaving well. Mm-hmm. But that's been my experience from here.
Yeah, I think that's right. To me, it goes to this bigger question of like, why we're such Tesla bulls. There's so much hype in this AI data center space right now. So many people are calling it a bubble. But as I'm taking a step back as an investor, you want to go to where so you want to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is right now. And over the next decade or so, like where do you think more value is actually going to be created? Like, is it in the chat GPTs of the world? And, a lot of the stuff that like Google came out with some pretty impressive stuff with Gemini 3. But is it in kind of apps and that sort of thing? Or is it in real world applications, like Tesla's building out with FSD first and eventually Optimus?
My sense is that, and I know this is speculative, but I feel like the real world is going to be where a lot of the economic value is captured. Now, businesses are certainly using AI to automate processes, and then they're getting rid of workers. There's, kids are graduating from college and they're having a really hard time getting jobs. Entry level work seems to be threatened. Your data entry is the boring, repetitive work in offices. So there is a lot of value there as far as being able to goose your profits. But my sense is that value delivery as far as with autonomy or autonomous or with robots in the factory, I think is going to be pretty substantial.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think both will be extremely valuable, which I think gets to this really good scenario of like a bright AI future that Elon talks a lot about. We're finding these applications have a lot of value in our work, and we're seeing a lot of companies that are doing very similar things. The Atlanta Fed's GDP now, at least earlier today, was at 4.2%. And I keep talking like that's actually a crazy number. 4.2% quarterly GDP growth. Now it's down to 4.0%. They just updated it today. So, but like we were not in a 4% real GDP growth regime up until this AI, excitement kind of took off. So all these people calling it a bubble right now, to me, it just doesn't. It doesn't pass the smell test when all these people are getting more efficient at their jobs. They're able to do more with less. They're able to, reduce the number of mistakes they're making, come up to speed on a new topic more quickly. Like if we're all essentially like increasing in IQ by like a couple percent and increasing in the amount of work we're able to get done, like how does that not have a massive impact on the economy? Even if it's hard to tell exactly, which companies are winning and how it translates to, the stock market going up when there's like all this CapEx going in there. To me, like if it's having that much of an impact on the economy, it's got to be like, it can't be a bubble.
Yeah. It's been crazy. All the bad takes I've heard around AI, around Nvidia. Michael Burry came out and called Nvidia a fraud, and Nvidia actually responded to it on a point by point basis or whatnot. Just a lot of bad takes around Nvidia. Like their inventory increased at the end of the quarter versus the end of the previous quarter, and they're quickly ramping their sales. Like in order to deliver for the next quarter, you need to end the quarter with inventory. So like there's all this fear that like there's some kind of bubble that's about to pop, and they're like, oh, they have a bunch of inventory, they can't sell them. No, that's not true. You need to build inventory to sell it. One mistake Nvidia had, and this did cause an air pocket, I think it was over a year ago, is when they didn't have enough, I don't know, it was like Blackwells or something. The ramp was slow to get that going, and so like they didn't have them to sell, and now Nvidia is ramping them rapidly, and they're getting them ready. Probably one problem that data centers have is like getting enough power to the data centers.
Yeah, well, it drives me crazy. You've got all these like horrible takes of people who don't know like basic accounting or like financial statement analysis. Like first off, Burry should know better because he's known to be somebody who's like well known at like going into the details of like company
Mhm.
filings and digging into this stuff. And so to call it a fraud when essentially his point was that the useful life of these data center this data center PP&E that's essentially on their books, the useful life was being extended, which decreases the depreciation. It's like, yeah, that's an accounting election that the auditors review and approve based
Mhm.
on like what they're actually seeing in the field with this stuff. So like fraud is not something that like your auditors see like elect to make a change, publish it in the 10Qs and 10Ks, along with like accompanying notes. Like that's just not fraud. So there's some amount of you could say it's misleading or that these won't actually live up to that type of useful life. That's one argument, but like all this crying of like that's a fraud, that is just like you don't know what you're talking about if you're going to claim an accounting election that is audited and published in the annual reports is a
Mhm.
fraud. Like a fraud is like finding stuff that's like deep buried in non-public information that you can like find that there's like some like I don't know round trip trading or something like that. So that sort of stuff just drives me crazy. Yeah, and
But
then
Matt,
on
I heard that the auditor for OpenAI is the same guy who audited WorldCom or something. So that
yeah,
therefore OpenAI is a fraud.
well by that same logic, Jim Chanos, who called Enron successfully, almost 20 years ago or more than
Yeah.
20 years ago. Now, any company he doesn't like must also be a fraud because he got that one thing right.
Mhm.
It's just it's so frustrating. And then a lot of people talking about the Nvidia inventory increase, like you said.
So we're not calling anyone a fraud, just to be clear.
but the Nvidia inventory increase. So okay, they beat on revenue expectations, meaning they delivered more product in the quarter than they even
Mhm.
said they would, and that analysts were expecting. On top of that, they raised their guidance for future quarters and they significantly increased their inventory on hand. And when you do the math on how many days of inventory on hand, like it's actually not an increase. And so if you just look at this absolute value of inventory compared to historical levels, like yeah, you could say, oh my gosh, their inventory level is 10 times higher than it was 2 years ago. Like this is like a crazy amount of overbuilt. Okay, well yeah, but so is their revenue. Like you've got to look at these
Mhm.
things in relation to the line item on the income statement that these are related to. So
Also,
there's
the
just a lot of
CFO, the CFO clarified. So Jensen a few weeks ago said that over the next 6 quarters after this quarter, Nvidia would do 500 billion in revenue. And Matt and I, you and I got together and we're like, okay, well, that means that the last 4 of those quarters are going to do 367 billion, which is pretty crazy to do
yeah,
over 12 months. And
and Wall Street is not anywhere near those numbers.
the CFO clarified that 500 billion was only about like the deals that they had signed. It didn't include any new customers or any new deals that get delivered within those 6 quarters.
Yeah. So, I had a post this weekend about like this Prof G podcast I listened to where they're like, the whole presumption was like, well, obviously we're in a bubble because I mean, the market shouldn't be this strong and people are
Mhm.
investing a lot into AI. But like it was all like a presumption and kind of like hearsay and like very kind of weak sentimental type of arguments. There was nothing about like why Nvidia's demand would suddenly decrease when OpenAI's usage is at all-time highs and Gemini is doing extremely well and like their monthly active users are increasing to extreme levels right now. I think like there was reason for some skepticism a while ago that some of this might at least slow down.
Mhm.
OpenAI in particular, it's like okay, well like a monthly subscription isn't the most obvious way to like to monetize that given the massive amount of capex that OpenAI is trying to put in the ground. But like there was a deal announced recently that I think went somewhat under the radar of basically allowing Walmart to people to buy stuff on Walmart right through ChatGPT. And I've actually started using ChatGPT to like help me select products that I need, or like come up with like Christmas gift ideas and things like that. So I think there's going to be a lot of more ways like that OpenAI can, and all these other companies can participate in some of the economics that they're driving by helping people to get to better outcomes in a way that's much better than what Google did. So like if Google was the best business ever, is like the Acquired podcast said, if you ever listen to that one, it's like the business model of Google is like the best business model that has ever existed in humanity. Well, like I think what's happening right now with like these chat bots in the first iteration of this business model, it's like helping us to make better decisions. And then, hey, would you like me to go ahead and make that decision and either take some slice of that revenue or get some sort of kickback from the partner that you end up buying a product from? Like, of course, these business models are going to evolve to incorporate that. And that's going to, I think, be one of the ways that these business models evolve over time. So to essentially prove that we're not in a huge bubble here.
So you were talking about the podcast. Did you mention like the punchline that they shared at the end of the podcast?
Yeah. So for anyone who didn't see my post on this, I like to listen to other points of view just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And so this Prof G podcast with Aswath Damodaran, who's like one of my kind of heroes, because growing up, but when I was first starting my career, he's the dean of valuation, essentially. He's a professor of valuation at NYU. We used a lot of his models, a lot of his frameworks in the valuation work that we were doing when I was starting out my career in New York. And so I've always really respected his point of view, and he taught me a lot about modeling just in a lot of the stuff that I've reviewed from the work that he's put out there. But anyways, Prof G and Professor Damodaran, we're basically talking, as I was saying earlier, about how we're obviously in a bubble. And so the question is, when is it going to pop? And how do you, as an investor, position yourself for the fact that we're going to have this massive pop in the bubble of all this AI spend? So at the very end of the podcast, they're like, so like, how do you use AI in your daily life? And so like Professor Damodaran was basically like, oh yeah, like I've a lot of the data sets that I used to, spend a lot of the time every month and every quarter populating, like I've created these AI tools that are doing that for me automatically right now, which is really great because then I can focus on like bigger, higher level problems, and it frees up more of my headspace to do that. And so it's just like, these guys that are so like skeptical on AI and like are going with this presumption that we're in this massive AI bubble are also talking about how great it is and like how much value they're getting at it in their own lives. Now, like to their point, like I don't want to like totally tear down the what they're saying, because it can be true that you can get values out of something, but there's not a business model that makes sense for that product. So like it's at least possible that could be the case, but that did just like I was just like I wanted to like rip my hair out. I was like, how can you say that at the end of the podcast that you just had? Like, oh yeah, like these tools are great. I'm getting a huge amount of value from them, and obviously, we're spending too much on them. Okay. How much is your time worth, Professor? Like, how much time is this saving you? Like, it's just the business models have to evolve. I will give them that point. I'll step off my soapbox now, but it was just like so many terrible takes out there right now. And maybe last thing I'll say is just tying it back to what you said at the beginning, which is like, that meme of like people have no idea. Coming back to Tesla, one of the analysts out there put out this report that Elon responded to, basically saying like nobody has any idea how good Tesla's FSD is. There's maybe 1 out of 100 Americans that have ever taken a ride in a robo taxi of any type. So like awareness is just rock bottom. Meanwhile, capability is skyrocketing, and that mismatch between perception and reality is like it could not be more skewed. And so like that's going to like eventually that dam's going to break, whether it's Tesla advertising like you were suggesting, or it's just more butts and seats, and it takes time for that awareness to grow. But like eventually the capability is only going to continue to get better from here, and awareness is also only going to continue to go from 0 today to something more than that in the future. And I think that's going to sell a lot of Teslas and a lot of FSD subscriptions and a lot of FSD sales, and that's going to be good news for Tesla.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this turns out. So, maybe we could talk about some lemonade.
Yeah, let's talk a little lemonade. So they had a event in Tel Aviv, I think it was this past week. So we didn't go, unfortunately, but there was somebody who posted a pretty good description of what they're doing on the AI front. So there were some new nuggets that we learned.
I think it's like a recruiting event for
Mhm.
tech and AI in Tel Aviv in Israel.
Yeah, and so there wasn't anything I would say that was earth shattering in these new details, and I don't have the thing pulled up to kind of go through all the details, but I think my impression after reading through that, it was like they are just unleashing AI in every corner of their business, like every little nook and every cranny. Like they are just going as aggressively as possible with as many tools as possible. And they're trying to integrate it all together so that like fraud detection is as automated as possible, claims payouts are as automated as possible, and like the tools that they were building 2 and 3 years ago, they're finding better ways to do them now. And so they don't have this like sunk cost fallacy with it. It's like, well, this is the way we've always done things. So the pace at which they're moving, I think, is actually like insanely impressive. So I was just like even more, I think, convicted in my bull case with them, because what we've seen now for several quarters is the core metrics are improving in a way that's consistent with the thesis. But then when we're looking under the hood at what's enabling that, it's legitimate technology. It's a legitimate culture of like badass engineers that are like building these tools, and they're always striving to get better. So let's get
my
into
takeaway. Some specifics. So one thing they shared was if you have renter's insurance and you have a claim, you can do a video walkthrough of your apartment, and 5-minute video walkthrough, and you can use that to file a claim instead of like scheduling to have an adjuster come out to your apartment to do that and like having to wait. So you can do a claim that way.
And just piggybacking on that, so that same process that you're doing, it also ties into fraud detection. So like they had somebody do that, and their AI noticed that the TV that was in the claim was in this video walkthrough that somebody did. So they were saying their TV was damaged. Meanwhile, there it is on the wall. As they're saying like, "Hey, pull up your iPhone," and they do it. So their fraud detector like realized that was a TV on the wall, that it was probably the same TV that was, being filed a claim for, and automatically flagging that. It
wasn't stolen or damaged.
Yeah, exactly. So, like you're not only reducing cost, you're having a better user experience, because then they don't have to have some stranger in their home, and you're getting better at fraud detection. It's like the wins compound on each other in a way that's kind of hard to really wrap your mind around.
They also shared that 57% of claims were handled fully by automation and AI, and that of the 43% that are dealt with humans, they said that that process was augmented by AI. So you're just getting the right information in front of the person, so they can make that decision quickly. So it's automating the easy choices and kicking the harder decisions to the human for human review. And I think this is a lot of what Palantir does for their processes when they're bringing agents to one of the businesses that they're helping out.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I hadn't exactly thought of that parallel, but I think you're right. Like Lemonade has all these systems that they've built in house to, essentially make the ontology of these of the entire business like extremely uniform, and like to have it be extremely clear. Like, okay, this is what the process of bringing a new customer looks like, and then let's make sure that all the document onboarding software that they've built. Like, let's make sure that that integrates with the claims processing thing. Let's make sure that it integrates with the fraud detection AI over here. And so it's got all these you got one funnel for all this data ingestion. One other cool example they shared was like in their data ingestion funnel, they've got this thing that like can read handwritten like doctors or veterinarians like chicken scratch and figure out whether that needs human review or how to handle those types of scenarios, as well as like PDFs that are completely readable. So it's like figuring out how to like elevate things that need a little bit more review and automating a huge amount of that. So but yeah, the parallels to Palantir I think are pretty interesting. It's just that Palantir is trying to like outsource that whole thing as a product or a service that they're selling to other companies, whereas Lemonade has just built it all in-house and is constantly iterating on it.
Yeah. Also in the news this week, and we will come back to Lemonade, is new AI models being released. Gemini 3 came out, and then Grok 4.1 came out, and then Anthropic Claude, they brought out Opus 4.5. Shai, who's the CTO of Lemonade, I think they're on OpenAI or something like that. He's looking at Gemini and the whole antimatter development software that Google has for Gemini, and he's like, pushing his team like, how quickly can we get moved over to the combo of Gemini 3 and antimatter? It's pretty wild that they're talking about moving from where they are to a whole new thing, because they're like excited by the shiny object over at Gemini, but they tested it out.
Yeah, I don't think it's like being enticed by the shiny object so much is like that has a negative connotation to it a little bit. But I think it's like being adaptable to what is the absolute best tool that we can have in our tool chest today. So remember when GPT-5 came out, he had everyone switch to using that for coding because he was doing some testing and found that it was the best coding assistant out there for the type of stuff that they were doing. And now it sounds like he's willing to kind of scrap all the learnings from that and move on to what is the current cutting edge. So I guess the risk with that strategy is maybe your employees lose a bit of ability to use, like you have a certain skill set in terms of using one of these coding assistants versus the other, and if you're shifting too frequently, maybe there's some inefficiencies or some growing pains associated with that. But overall, I would say like the what Elon says is true, which is like the pace of innovation is the most important metric, and I'd rather have someone like pushing to be as cutting edge as possible, like Shai is doing here, than just saying like, oh, we're using GPT-4 because it's like fast and we spent 6 months in a training program and now we know how to use it. Like, I like the fact that they're just like hardcore, just like burn it all down. We're going to start again.
Yeah.
So, but you had a spicy take too, that you're actually thinking about maybe switching out of the Apple ecosystem for the first time. What's behind that potential decision that you have?
Yeah, like Siri is so bad. I know Apple is going to be using the Google models. They're allegedly going to pay Google $1 billion a year so that Siri can be powered by Google. I'm not holding my breath that like it's going to be a great implementation. It's going to be better than where Siri is today, and admittedly, Siri today is better than what it was a couple of years ago, but it's not a whole lot better.
Not much.
Yeah, it's not much better. So I'm a bit of an early adopter, and I'm there's not much holding me to the Apple ecosystem anymore. I got some pictures that I can put on there with my family and keep me to, so I can get my pictures there. But beyond that, like I used to be tied to Apple because I would take the CDs that I own and I would get them on iTunes, and then I didn't have to pay the $1.99 a song to have it on iTunes, to play it on my iPod or on my iPhone. Like, that's not a thing anymore. I'm on Spotify, so nothing really keeping me to Apple anymore. So I'm very tempted to switch over to Google, and I wouldn't do this with client information, but I I don't see a problem like using Gmail and Google Docs and all these things to give it information so it can help be like a really good personal assistant, a digital assistant.
Yeah, I was listening to another podcast recently with Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, and he basically like did something very similar, where he like gave it like a decade plus of like all of his emails and meetings and notes and documents and like everything like that, just so it understood how he thinks and like how his thinking evolves over time. And basically built this, not exactly a digital twin, but something that at least understands how he thinks and how he might want his life to be managed. And
Yeah.
it's got all this context now from, literally like a decade worth of electronic records from him, as well as these interactions that he's had with this, AI, as he's been kind of querying it for things. And like, it's super cutting edge early adopters like, Daniel Ek and like you, who are going to kind of go through the work of doing a lot of that right now. But it doesn't take a whole big stretch of the imagination to figure out, a way where the Googles, the Apples of the world will streamline this and essentially backfeed all that information to provide you with that personalized assistant type of service in the future. So I think it'd be a cool experiment for you to go that route.
Mm.
I'm still probably a little too old school where I don't really want it knowing every single thing about me and my kids. And but I think probably 5-10 years from now, nobody's going to care about that. But I still do have a little bit of those like privacy hangups where I don't want it to like know exactly everything about how I think. Like I had a I like ask Grok to roast me or something like that once, because I hadn't tried that in a long time. And it was like bringing up all these like random queries that I had like used in Grok that, yeah, I guess I didn't really think they were private, but it just like somehow hearing them like reiterated back to you was just like, oh, well, like you're like actively going back to my like query history and like, pulling stuff up on like other companies I've researched or whatever it was. And it's just like, there's something that's slightly off-putting about that to some people. And I think I'm kind of in that bucket right now, but I do think that's going to change because we just get more used to that being a reality. I mean,
Did
Google
it
does
make
it. It's
fun
just
of
more
your
subtle.
beloved Lions or Wolverines or something?
No, I don't even remember like the gist of what it was, but I think it was something like it was probably actually making fun of like my stock like investments. It's like, oh, you're always asking questions about like data centers and you think you're at the cutting edge of like how they're going to be
Mm.
powered, like, hey, like here's an update, you're not. You're just like it was just like one of those like stupid like middle
Uh-huh.
school, like
Yeah.
jabs, but it was like doing so based on like my queries from months ago that I'd forgotten about.
Mm.
So yeah, it was just kind of funny where it's like, oh, I don't like, first of all, that's not funny. And second of all, I don't love that like that's all like right there in your memory.
Yeah.
But
I've gone kind of extreme, so I'll do a little bit of a confession. So I don't know how far Daniel Ek took things. I didn't like train my own large language model or fine tune it to my life or anything like that. But
mhm.
um, I have extensively used Claude Code to organize a lot of my documents and conversations. So at each of the providers, so there's Grok, there's OpenAI's Chat GPT, there's Anthropic Claude. Each of those, and there's also on X, you can interact with Grok on X. I pulled my data from all four of those into my Claude Code. Your eyes are already glazing over, I can see. I pulled that all together and I created a system where it would file them and it automatically suggests like what area is the right fit for it to go into. So I got it all brought in and now I got to do something with it. That's going to be the hard part.
You are a nerd. Like like I don't want to, like, the last thing I want to use these tools for is like to organize my files and like, do that. It's like what I find so useful is like digging into like deep into topics that I find interesting and kind of going down rabbit holes that way. But like I think what you're doing is actually probably going to be a lot more productive in the long run, where like you're like helping yourself to like organize your life better. And that's like that's
I have
where
ADD, so that's my problem. Is like I'll I'm not hyperactive, but I have like the super focus. I'll tunnel in on one subject, one to three, typically one, and everything else just falls by the wayside. So like I need something to help me stay on track with everything else, so I don't just like die of starvation and dehydration while I am down in this rabbit hole or something.
do you forget to blink? Are you like that deep in the weeds? You're like, oh, why do my eyes feel like paper? I've had that from time to time when I'm just like staring at something, just like, whoa, what happened? But I
Oh,
do think it's crazy though that these tools can help you to like address that problem, in your life, like help you get better. Like it helps me to go deeper on research and to come up to speed
mm,
on companies faster. Like, and it was instrumental in us making the decision to rebuy into Bloom Energy earlier this year. When the stock was in the 20s, like it was reviewing way more documents than I could have and giving a summary of what was going on with some like very important regulatory filings. And we were a little bit on the fence of whether or not we should re-enter in that stock or not. And the amount of research that it did in essentially aiding me to kind of come up to speed on some of these really important things, like that was like a huge, very tangible benefit to our clients, to our firm.
mm,
And like, so like it's already having a real world, impact on the economy, because like it's helping you and I and so many people just to be better. So the business models are slightly opaque and that needs to evolve over time. But
yeah,
if this much value is being created, and then the question to me is around, okay, like what's the right value capture, and what are the right mechanisms to, kind of share that with the user and the provider of the, these AI tools. So I'm when there's this much on the table to be captured, I'm not super concerned about whether we're in a bubble or not. It's just let's see how these business models evolve to capture this value.
yeah. I'm trying to remind myself, how much time we're saving with each AI call or chat that I'm having. You remind me of like a deep research I did while we were digging into Bloom, where we looked at all the makers of natural gas turbines. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one way that many data centers currently produce power. They do it at first is they get all these natural gas engines. They call them turbines. They're pretty big, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not like a windmill size thing. Um, and they use them to produce power until the utility can produce power for the data center. But they're sold out till like 2028. And I had uh, the deep research from ChatGPT figure out, okay, all the major makers of those turbines, whether they're publicly listed or not, where are they at with their supply? What's been communicated, what's known in the market. And
Mm-hmm.
so like that competitive information is really good.
Yeah, and I mean, we were thinking, all right, maybe the better bet than investing in Bloom would be to invest in one of these manufacturers. But then you kind of go and say, okay, like, well, how much more quickly are they building new capacity? When will it be online? What does that earnings power look like in 2029, 2030? And it helps us to, there's a clear trend that's happening here with data centers, needing more power. But then the question for us is, how do you turn that into an investable thesis? And
Mm-hmm.
that was instrumental in us finding Bloom, which is like, I mean, go look at the stock chart of that. It's like it's just outrageous what it's done.
Yep.
So it's been a huge help for us. And yeah, so this is the anti Prof G podcast, I think, this week.
Yeah.
We're not AI maxis. I think we are trying to be realistic, but like I do think that the truth about how valuable these tools are
Mhm.
is enough to like get excited about and to say that like this um, when I'm hearing these people talk about a bubble and they don't understand the accounting of Nvidia's inventory. And one of the lines they said on there was Tesla doesn't seem to know what Tesla's plan is. And I was like, they literally just came out with Master Plan Part 4. like the roadmap is so clear with robo taxis and with
Mhm.
Optimus. Like for you to just like go on a podcast, not you, but for someone to go on a podcast and make that type of statement, it's like, all right, there's a lot of talking heads out there. You and I are talking heads. We got to
Yeah.
be realistic about that, and we're not going to be right about everything. But some people are more right than others, and I'm trying to pay close attention to who are the useful voices out there that are seeking the
Mhm.
truth and that aren't just kind of sticking to a narrative and that
Yeah.
actually have useful things to say.
It can be hard to avoid the hype. So like every time a new AI model comes out, all the influencers are like, "This is the best model ever. I'm switching to it. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread." And so it could be hard dealing with that noise. So LJ says, "I remember when Bradford was first discussing posting an opening for an AI assisted programmer." Um, so like about 2-3 weeks ago, our programmer announced to our team that they developed a process that literally saves us 80 days of work per year. Not every person on the team, but saves 2 team members 40 days of work per year. Like that's a lot of work. That's a lot of time. So we're big believers in that.
Mhm.
Also, yeah, I'll admit this. Like, I missed the boat on Apple as an investment. I know there's a good number of people who went all in on Tesla and they benefited from Apple. So, like, I've tended to be the skeptic or the value investor over time. But what I learned was like that skepticism wasn't really serving me. It wasn't serving my clients either. Um,
Mhm.
I thought I was protecting my clients, but I was preventing them from gains, and so things change for me over time. I've evolved. There's this other good comment. It says it's Darwinian how those claiming AI is in a bubble, because those very people are going to be the ones who are left behind. They're resisting adopting this technology. I think AI is this shift is similar to going from the typewriter to the word processor, from the ledger, or maybe like the punch card calculators to the spreadsheet. I
Mhm.
think it's as profound or maybe more profound than that. Um,
I think it's more because like it's gonna like um speed up everything. Like,
mhm.
I think we're the real question right now is like, okay, like can scientific discoveries, actually be made with this? And it's like, all right, if that's the level, like we know it can do everything below that. It's like each one of us can become more and more efficient and get more output done, and companies can be more efficient and do more with less. That's a pretty good spot to be in. And these tools are only getting better from here. So it's not to say that the market's going to be up only. It certainly won't be. But these, we do believe that this is a secular trend, meaning it's here to stay, and it's going to be an investable thesis for a long time. So we're trying to find the relative winners in that space and try to be a little bit underweight if we can some of the losers, because I think there are going to be, there's people that are going to be left behind, like that last comment said. But I think there's also going to be companies that are left behind that are resistant to change, or you got a lot of people that are close to retirement and they don't want to learn new skills, and you got a lot of interdepartmental dynamics that go on with some large companies. And I think for a lot of those companies that have that kind of stasis and that brittle infrastructure where they can't adapt to these new tools, or like if you're so concerned about like not wanting to have a legal issue by like having something go to OpenAI potentially that like you just overcorrect and say you can't use any of these tools. Well, it's like you're obviously going to get left behind, if you're too restrictive. So you got to be smart about this. Like, you got to make sure that you're in compliance with all your, regulations and everything like that. But there's ways that you can do that and still get the benefit of these tools. And so I think trying to find the companies that are really leading in this space, Lemonade, I think is probably the single best example out there. But I think that's just a winning proposition for investors in the current moment right now.
Last one. They said my analysis is a very calm one. So this is me excited, by the way. So
can confirm.
All right. So he's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. Obviously, we're excited about AI and automation and impact on markets and Tesla, Lemonade, and all this good stuff. With that, I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye for now.